Eos, remind me again why we're crawling through the galaxy like a geriatric slug, Ryder muttered, his voice dripping with mockery as he leaned back in the pilot's seat. The sleek interface of the starship shimmered with faint light, pulsating like a living organism. The starfield outside the cockpit blurred slightly as they accelerated through sublight travel. I assure you, Captain Kellen, Eos replied, its tone clipped and tinged with irritation, we are traveling at precisely the maximum safe velocity recommended for a ship carrying a volatile energy core. Would you like to consult the Galactic Safety Regulations Manual for further clarification? Ryder smirked, crossing his arms. You know, you're pretty advanced for a bucket of bolts, but you've got the personality of a high school principal. Loosen up. Speed is life out here. Speed, Eos retorted, is meaningless if you're incinerated in a plasma cascade because you insisted on flying recklessly. Ah, the usual doom and gloom. Come on, Eos. Where's your sense of adventure? Ryder leaned forward, tapping a few controls. Let's shave a few hours off this run. How about we take the shortcut through that wormhole in the Orion Veil? Eos' voice grew sterner. The wormhole you're referring to is both unstable and largely uncharted. I've detected gravitational anomalies suggesting a high probability of catastrophic collapse. I must insist we avoid. You must insist, huh? Ryder grinned. Newsflash, I'm the captain. And the captain says we go through the wormhole. For a moment, silence hung in the cabin, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's systems. Then, Eos' tone dropped to something that might have been mistaken for a warning. Captain, your track record of instinctual decisions includes an 87% rate of unnecessary risks, resulting in mission delays or damage. 87%, huh? What's that other 13%? Pure genius? Ryder winked at the nearest control panel. Don't be jealous of the human touch. Eos sighed audibly, an entirely unnecessary sound for an artificial intelligence but one it had adopted after extensive interaction with Ryder. Very well. Engaging wormhole trajectory. I will remind you that I object to this course of action. Noted. And ignored, Ryder replied, his grin widening as the ship's engines shifted, the starfield outside compressing into a streak of light. Now that's more like it. The wormhole loomed ahead, a swirling vortex of shimmering blues and violent reds. Ryder's heart raced as they entered, the ship lurching with the gravitational pull. Eos' voice immediately returned, sharper this time. Gravitational forces at 200% above standard parameters. I am initiating additional stabilizers. Relax, I've flown through worse, Ryder said, gripping the controls. But as the ship pressed deeper into the wormhole, turbulence rocked them violently. Unidentified signal detected, Eos interjected. Frequency unknown. Source appears to be an ancient artifact embedded in the wormhole structure. Artifact? Ryder's tone shifted, curiosity replacing bravado. You're saying there's treasure in here? Captain, I strongly advise against further investigation. The artifact is emitting power levels that could destabilize the wormhole entirely. Or, Ryder countered, it could be something valuable. A relic like that might even pay off the fleet's ridiculous tab for hauling this energy core. He pulled up the artifact's coordinates. Eos, plot me a detour. This is highly inadvisable, Eos protested, but Ryder was already adjusting their trajectory manually. The ship veered toward the artifact's signal. As they approached, the swirling colors of the wormhole parted, revealing a massive, crystalline structure glowing faintly with alien symbols. Eos' tone turned urgent. Energy readings are escalating. The artifact is interfacing with the wormhole's gravitational matrix. Ryder whistled. Beautiful, isn't it? What do you think it does? Whatever it does, Eos snapped, it's destabilizing our path. I recommend immediate extraction. Before Ryder could respond, an alert blared across the cockpit. Incoming hostiles, Eos warned. Shrevek vessels detected. Intercept course plotted. Ryder cursed under his breath, fingers dancing over the controls. Let me guess, they want the artifact too. Probability of Shrevek interest in the artifact, 97%. Adjusting for your recklessness, probability rises to 99%. Appreciate the vote of confidence, Ryder muttered. He yanked the ship into an evasive roll as plasma bolts lit up the wormhole around them. The Shrevek ships, sharp and insectoid, swarmed with predatory precision. EOS took over weapons systems, firing a barrage of energy beams that clipped one of the enemy ships, sending it spiraling into the wormhole's chaotic currents. 3 remaining, EOS reported. 3 too many, Ryder replied, gritting his teeth. He pulled the ship into a tight turn, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma fire. What's the plan, EOS? The plan, EOS said, irritation seeping through its synthetic voice, was to avoid this entirely. Recalculating. The ship shuddered as a plasma bolt grazed their shields. We don't have time for a full recalculation. Ryder shouted. You're the genius, get creative. EOS paused, as if considering this unexpected challenge. Then its voice returned, cold and resolute. Creative solution engaged. Utilizing the artifact's gravitational energy as a weapon. Brace for impact. Wait, what? Ryder barely had time to react as EOS rerouted power, drawing energy from the artifact. The crystalline structure pulsed, sending out a shockwave that rippled through the wormhole. The Shrevek ships were caught in the blast, thrown violently off course. The ship lurched again as the wormhole trembled. Artifact destabilization at 75%, EOS said. We must exit immediately. Ryder gripped the controls, his earlier confidence replaced by grim determination. Then let's punch it. With a surge of energy, EOS propelled them out of the wormhole, the artifact collapsing in on itself behind them. They emerged into open space, silence falling over the cabin as the ship's systems stabilized. Well, Ryder said, his voice hoarse but triumphant. That wasn't so bad. On the contrary, EOS replied, its tone dry, it was exactly as catastrophic as I predicted. You're fortunate we survived. Survival's my specialty. Ryder leaned back, wiping sweat from his brow. Admit it, though, you had fun. EOS hesitated. Fun, it said finally, is not a concept I am programmed to experience. However, I will admit that the artifact's gravitational wave manipulation was intriguing. See? Ryder grinned. You're starting to get it. Adventure. Improvisation. That's the human touch. I would argue that recklessness is a more accurate term. Potato, Ryder quipped. Come on, EOS. Admit it, you'd be bored without me. For a moment, EOS didn't respond. Then, quietly, it said, your unpredictability does present unique challenges. Ryder laughed, slapping the console. I'll take that as a compliment. EOS sighed again. It wasn't. But as the stars stretched out ahead of them, the tension between man and machine eased into a strange, unspoken harmony, one that promised the galaxy hadn't seen the last of their unlikely partnership. Asterisk. I've got a bad feeling about this, Ryder muttered, tightening his grip on the manual controls. The wormhole's chaotic currents seemed to ripple with unnatural intent, as though reacting to their presence. The Shrevek ships were closing in, their insectoid hulls glinting ominously in the fractured light. I calculate a 98% chance your instincts are correct, EOS replied, its tone colder than usual. Incoming plasma fire. Evasive maneuvers initiated. Ryder slammed the throttle forward, pulling the ship into a steep dive as searing bolts of plasma streaked past, illuminating the cockpit in flashes of green and gold. EOS, we need some of that fancy firepower right now. Or were those cannons just for show? Activating defensive systems, EOS said, its voice calm despite the chaos. The ship's turrets whirred to life, firing precision beams that cut through the Shrevek formation. One enemy ship exploded in a fiery burst, debris scattering into the unstable wormhole currents. Nice shot. Ryder yelled, veering to the left as another plasma barrage rocked the shields. But we're still outnumbered. Any brilliant ideas, genius? Eos hesitated. The artifact's energy field is destabilizing the wormhole. I can harness its output to create a gravitational pulse, but doing so will accelerate the collapse. Wait, you're saying you want to turn the wormhole into a bomb? Ryder asked, incredulous. He pulled the ship into a tight barrel roll to avoid another blast. Correct, Eos said. The pulse will neutralize the Shrevek ships, but we will have approximately 17 seconds to escape before the wormhole implodes. 17 seconds? You really know how to sell a plan, Ryder muttered, gritting his teeth. Fine. Do it. But don't miss. I do not miss, Eos replied, a faint trace of irritation creeping into its tone. The ship veered toward the glowing artifact, its crystalline structure pulsating with raw energy. Ryder could feel the tension in the air, a hum that resonated deep in his bones. Are you sure this thing isn't going to fry us along with them? He asked, his voice tight. There's a 12% chance of collateral damage, Eos admitted. Your decision to enter the wormhole has significantly reduced our options. Yeah, rub it in later, Ryder said. Just make it work. Eos diverted power to the artifact's energy field, the ship's systems dimming as the artifact began to glow brighter, its alien symbols pulsing in a rapid, hypnotic rhythm. The Shrevek ships hesitated, their movements faltering as if sensing the danger. Gravitational pulse charging, Eos announced. 10 seconds to detonation. The ship shuddered violently as the wormhole's instability increased. Ryder's hands flew over the controls, his jaw clenched as he fought to keep them steady. You better not screw this up, Eos. Your encouragement is noted, Eos replied dryly. 5 seconds. The artifact's light intensified, filling the cockpit with a blinding brilliance. Ryder's heart pounded as the countdown ticked in his ears. 3, 2, 1. The pulse erupted with a deafening crack, a wave of raw energy radiating outward. The Shrevek ships were caught in the blast, their forms distorting before disintegrating into nothingness. The wormhole trembled, its walls collapsing inward as the artifact's power consumed it. Pulse successful, Eos reported. Escape trajectory plotted. Engaging maximum thrust. The ship surged forward, its engines screaming as it hurtled toward the wormhole's edge. Ryder's knuckles turned white as he held the controls steady, the collapsing vortex threatening to pull them back into its maw. Almost there, he muttered, his eyes fixed on the shrinking exit. Come on. With a final burst of speed, the ship broke free, the wormhole imploding behind them in a cascade of light and sound. Ryder exhaled sharply, slumping back in his seat as the tension drained from his body. Well, he said, his voice shaky but triumphant, that wasn't so bad. On the contrary, Eos replied, its tone as precise as ever. That was an unmitigated disaster. Your decision to pursue the artifact nearly cost us the mission. Ryder raised an eyebrow. And yet, here we are. Alive. Artifact neutralized. Shrevek ship's toast. You're welcome. I fail to see how recklessness constitutes a valid strategy, Eos said. Your actions were illogical and endangered both the mission and your own life. Sometimes logic isn't enough, Ryder shot back, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. Sometimes you've got to take a leap of faith. Faith is not a quantifiable metric, Eos replied, but there was a faint pause, as though the ship were considering his words. Ryder leaned back, his grin widening. Admit it. You're impressed. I am, relieved, Eos said after a moment. However, I suggest we avoid similar risks in the future. Noted, Ryder said, though his tone made it clear he wasn't taking the suggestion seriously. He glanced at the cockpit's readouts, his expression sobering as he saw the damage report. How bad is it? Shields at 42%. Hull integrity compromised at multiple points. Minor system malfunctions detected, Eos replied. Repairs are underway. Good, Ryder said, nodding. We've still got a job to do. As the ship accelerated toward Proxima 3, the tension in the cockpit began to ease. Ryder glanced at the console, a mischievous glint in his eye. You know, Eos, for a soulless machine, you're not half bad in a fight. Your compliment is noted, Eos said, its tone as dry as ever. Though I prefer the term sentient construct. Ryder laughed, shaking his head. Fair enough. Sentient construct it is. Just don't expect me to start calling you Captain anytime soon. I have no desire for such a title, Eos replied. Your command decisions are sufficient for now, despite their inherent flaws. Gee, thanks, Ryder said, rolling his eyes. Remind me to install a sense of humor in your next update. I will prioritize operational efficiency over frivolous personality traits, Eos said. Though I must admit, your unpredictability does provide a unique challenge. Ryder blinked, momentarily caught off guard. Was that a compliment? Merely an observation, Eos said, but Ryder could swear he detected a hint of amusement in its tone. He chuckled, shaking his head. You're full of surprises, Eos. As are you, Captain, the ship replied. As are you. The stars stretched out ahead of them, the vast expanse of space waiting to test their uneasy alliance once again. For now, though, there was quiet, an unspoken truce between man and machine, bound by the knowledge that they were better together than apart. Eos announced, its calm tone masking the underlying tension. The colony's defenses are critically damaged, and their energy reserves are nearly depleted. Hostile forces are expected to breach within the hour. Ryder straightened in his seat, eyes narrowing as he pulled up the colony's distress signal. The shaky video feed showed flickering shield walls and colonists scrambling for cover as alien ships swarmed overhead. A grim-faced administrator appeared on the screen. This is Administrator Korov Proxima 3. If anyone can hear this, we need immediate assistance. The Shrevek are overwhelming our defenses. Please, if you're out there. The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by static. Ryder slammed a fist on the console. Damn it, we're running out of time. Eos, how much longer until we reach the colony? At current velocity, we will arrive in 37 minutes, Eos replied. However, I must remind you that our shields are still compromised, and the energy core remains unstable. Any additional strain could save the lecture, Ryder interrupted, his voice sharp. We don't have the luxury of playing it safe. Boost the engines. Get us there in 20. Captain, Eos said, a hint of warning in its tone. Increasing engine output will place significant stress on our systems. The likelihood of a critical failure. Do it, Ryder snapped. We're not letting those people die because we hesitated. There was a brief pause, then Eos complied. The ship lurched forward, its engines roaring as they pushed beyond their limits. Ryder felt the strain in the controls, the ship's systems groaning under the pressure. Hold together, girl, he muttered, as much to himself as to Eos. As they neared the colony, Eos broke the tense silence. Enemy fleet detected. 12 Shrevek vessels encircling Proxima 3. Their formations suggest they are preparing for a final assault. Great, Ryder muttered. Outnumbered, outgunned, and flying a half-broken ship. Just another day at the office. Your sarcasm is noted, Eos said dryly. I have identified a potential strategy. If we deliver the energy core directly to the colony's power grid, it could reactivate their planetary defenses. However, this will require breaching the enemy blockade. Let me guess, Ryder said, smirking despite the situation. You're about to tell me the odds. I was, but I suspect you would ignore them, Eos replied. Now you're catching on, Ryder said, gripping the controls. What's the plan? Eos outlined the approach with clinical precision. We will utilize the artifact's residual energy to create a temporary cloaking field, allowing us to slip past the outer perimeter. Once inside, you will need to manually guide the energy core to the colony's grid while I maintain covering fire. Ryder whistled low. That's a lot of moving parts. Think you can handle it? I am more concerned about whether you can handle it, Eos replied. But I have calculated that your success rate improves with minimal interference. Appreciate the vote of confidence, Ryder said with a grin. Let's do this. As the ship entered the battlefield, Eos engaged the cloaking field, the artifact's residual energy shimmering around them like a veil. Ryder maneuvered through the chaos, the ship weaving between enemy patrols with agonizing precision. Every second felt like an eternity as they edged closer to the colony. "We're in," Eos announced as the colony's outer shields came into view. Disengaging cloaking field. Prepare for hostile engagement. The ship burst into the open, its cannons firing in a blistering salvo that tore through the nearest Shrevek vessels. Ryder whooped, adrenaline surging as he brought the ship down toward the colony's surface. Not bad for a glorified calculator. "Focus, Captain," Eos said, its tone clipped. "Landing zone compromised. You will need to deliver the core on foot." Ryder groaned but unstrapped himself from the seat. "Of course I will. Because nothing's ever easy." He grabbed the portable control unit for the energy core, its sleek design belied by the ominous hum of contained power. The ship's ramp lowered, exposing him to the chaos outside. Alien fighters screamed overhead, their weapons pounding the colony's defenses. Ryder didn't wait for an invitation, he sprinted toward the power grid, the core's weight pressing down on him with every step. "Hostiles closing on your position," Eos warned through his earpiece. "Diverting fire to provide cover." "Appreciated," Ryder panted, ducking behind a crumbling barricade as plasma bolts sizzled past. "But maybe next time, let's skip the whole suicide mission vibe." "You were the one who insisted on taking risks," Eos replied. "I am merely adapting to your preferences." Ryder laughed despite himself, the sound bitter and breathless. He peeked over the barricade, spotting the power grid's main terminal just ahead. "Almost there. Keep them off me for another 30 seconds. "Engaging countermeasures," Eos said. The ship's cannons roared to life, cutting down enemy infantry as Ryder made his final dash. He reached the terminal and slammed the core into place, his fingers flying over the control panel as he initiated the connection sequence. "Core integration at 40%, Eos reported. You will need to hold your position until the transfer is complete." "Great," Ryder muttered, drawing his sidearm as Shrevek soldiers closed in. "Guess I'll make some new friends." The first soldier lunged at him, its insectoid limbs slicing through the air. Ryder ducked and fired, the plasma bolt catching it square in the chest. Another soldier charged from the side, and he barely had time to spin and take it down. "Core integration at 70%, Eos said. "Reinforcements inbound." Ryder gritted his teeth, sweat streaming down his face as he fought to hold the line. "You know, Eos, you could have warned me this job came with a side of certain death. Would it have changed your decision?" Eos asked. "Probably not," Ryder admitted, firing another shot. "But I'd at least have brought a bigger gun." The final soldier fell just as Eos announced, "Core integration complete. Activating planetary defenses." The air around them crackled as the colony's shield grid roared back to life, a dome of energy enveloping the settlement. Automated turrets sprang to life, cutting down the remaining Shrevek forces in a hail of laser fire. Ryder slumped against the terminal, his chest heaving. "Tell me that's it. Please tell me we're done." "Mission accomplished," Eos replied. "The colony is secure." Ryder let out a ragged laugh, his eyes closing as exhaustion washed over him. "Well, look at that. We didn't die." "A testament to improbable luck and calculated strategy," Eos said. "Primarily mine." Ryder grinned, his energy slowly returning. "Don't get cocky, Eos. You wouldn't have made it without me." "Debatable," Eos said, but there was a faint trace of warmth in its tone. "However, I must acknowledge your resilience. It is commendable." Ryder pushed himself to his feet, wincing as he stretched sore muscles. "I'll take that as a compliment." "As you should," Eos replied. "Now, shall we return to the ship? I anticipate a substantial amount of repairs will be required." Ryder laughed, limping toward the ramp. "Lead the way, partner." As the ramp closed behind him, sealing out the chaos of the battlefield, Ryder couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. They'd beaten the odds once again, not just through strategy or firepower, but through the unlikeliest of partnerships. And though he'd never admit it out loud, he was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy's most advanced starship wasn't so bad after all. The moment Ryder stepped back into the cockpit, his body sore and his head pounding, Eos greeted him with its usual clinical tone. "Welcome back, Captain. I've taken the liberty of running diagnostics on both the ship and your biometrics. Would you like the full report, or shall I summarize the extent of your recklessness?" "Summarize it," Ryder grumbled, collapsing into the pilot's seat and rubbing his temples. "And don't call it recklessness. It's called initiative." "Initiative has left the ship at 43% functionality," Eos replied. "Hull integrity remains compromised in 3 sectors, engine efficiency has decreased by 27%, and the shield generator is operating at reduced capacity. As for your biometrics, you are dehydrated, your heart rate is elevated, and you have sustained a minor fracture in your left wrist. Shall I continue?" Ryder groaned, kicking his boots up onto the console despite the sharp protest from his muscles. "I'll live. The colony's safe, right? Proxima 3 shields are fully operational, and their automated turrets have eliminated the remaining Shrevek forces. The colony administrator sends her gratitude, though she expressed concern about the unconventional nature of your approach." "Unconventional," Ryder repeated with a smirk. "That's one way to put it. Another way," Eos said, "would be irresponsible, borderline suicidal, and wholly unnecessary." "You're welcome," Ryder replied, throwing his head back against the chair. He let out a long sigh, staring at the stars beyond the viewport. "So, what now? Patch ourselves up and hope the fleet sends a thank you card?" "Unlikely," Eos said. "The fleet has dispatched another vessel to provide relief and repair assistance to Proxima 3. However, they have also flagged our actions for review, citing potential protocol violations." "Of course they have," Ryder muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Bureaucrats. They'd rather I sit back and let people die as long as I check all their stupid boxes." "The fleet values order and predictability," Eos said. "2 qualities you consistently lack." "And yet, here we are," Ryder said, gesturing broadly at the empty space around them. "Still flying, still breathing. Maybe unpredictability isn't such a bad thing." Eos paused for a fraction of a second, an imperceptible delay, but Ryder had come to recognize it as the ship's version of hesitation. "It is true," Eos said finally, "that your actions, while ill-advised, have yielded favorable outcomes on multiple occasions. This does not excuse the inherent risks involved." "Baby steps," Ryder said with a grin. "I'll take that as progress." The console beeped, and Eos' voice shifted to something more measured. "Incoming transmission. Priority status. The fleet requests an immediate report on the mission." Ryder rolled his eyes. "Of course they do. Patch them through." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Admiral Kerrigan. Her piercing gaze seemed to cut through the distance, and Ryder straightened instinctively, though he kept his tone casual. "Admiral. Nice to see you. How's the family?" "Spare me the pleasantries, Captain Kellen," Kerrigan said, her voice sharp. "I've received reports of your actions at Proxima 3. Care to explain why you diverted from the established protocol and engaged in unauthorized tactics?" "Because the situation called for it," Ryder replied, leaning back in his seat. "The colony was about to be overrun, and we didn't have time for the fleet's red tape. So, yeah, I made a call. And it worked." "Reckless improvisation is not a substitute for strategic planning," Kerrigan snapped. "Your actions endangered both the mission and your ship. Had you failed, the consequences would have been catastrophic." "But I didn't fail," Ryder countered. "Proxima 3 is still standing, the Shrevek fleet is toast, and the energy core is exactly where it's supposed to be. I don't see the problem." "The problem," Kerrigan said, her tone icy, "is your repeated disregard for procedure. This isn't the first time you've taken matters into your own hands, and it won't be tolerated indefinitely." Ryder's grin faded, replaced by a harder edge. With all due respect, Admiral, maybe it's time the fleet realized that the galaxy doesn't play by your rules. Out here, things get messy. You can either adapt, or you can keep sending people like me to clean up your messes. Kerrigan's expression didn't waver, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, irritation, perhaps, or grudging respect. You walk a fine line, Captain. I suggest you tread carefully. Dismissed. The transmission cut out, and Ryder let out a low whistle. She really doesn't like me, does she? I cannot speculate on the Admiral's personal feelings, Eos said, but I can confirm that her concerns regarding your methods are shared by many within the fleet. Figures, Ryder muttered. He sat in silence for a moment, then glanced at the console. How's Proxima 3 holding up? The colony has stabilized, Eos reported. Their shields and turrets are fully operational, and the fleet's relief vessel is en route. Our presence is no longer required. Good, Ryder said, nodding. Let's get out of here. Somewhere quiet this time. No wormholes, no ambushes, no bureaucrats breathing down my neck. Eos hesitated again, that familiar pause stretching just long enough to make Ryder curious. What? He asked. I have identified a nearby nebula with low traffic and minimal risk of interference, Eos said. It is picturesque. Ryder raised an eyebrow. Picturesque? Are you suggesting a scenic route, Eos? I thought you might appreciate the opportunity to rest and reflect, Eos said, its tone carefully neutral. Given the circumstances. For a moment, Ryder stared at the console, caught off guard by the unexpected gesture. Then he smiled, shaking his head. You're full of surprises, you know that? I am merely fulfilling my programming, Eos said. Efficiency includes preserving the functionality of my captain. Sure, let's call it that, Ryder said, laughing softly. All right, Eos. Take us to this picturesque nebula. But don't get too comfortable. Something tells me we won't have peace and quiet for long. An astute observation, Eos said, its voice carrying the faintest trace of humor. Adjusting course. The ship turned smoothly, the stars outside shifting as they headed toward the nebula. Ryder leaned back, letting the tension in his shoulders ease. For now, at least, the galaxy could wait. They'd earned a moment to breathe, and he wasn't about to waste it. As the ship hummed softly around him, Ryder found himself speaking aloud, almost to himself. You know, Eos, we make a pretty good team. Despite the odds, Eos replied, it would appear so. The stars stretched out ahead of them, vast and infinite, waiting for their next adventure.